In the early years, organized crime among Italian immigrants in Sicily and southern Italy had ancient roots. Feudal social structures, vendettas, protection rackets, secret oaths, tribal loyalties, loosely organized bands who served local powers, sometimes the state itself, sometimes resisting it. The term mafia in Sicily signified more than pure crime: a code of honor, silence, omerta, family, territory, vendetta. Over centuries, this system coexisted with official authorities, sometimes corruptly intertwined. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, conditions in Sicily, poverty, ineffective government, injustice, empowered criminal networks. Merchants, landowners, peasants, all operated in liminal space, where the mafia offered protection, enforcement, and social order where the legal system failed. Meanwhile, many Sicilians emigrated to the United States, bringing with them cultural customs, distrust of centralized power, and occasionally criminal skills or ambition. In the U.S., growing Italian immigrant communities clustered in cities: New York, Chicago, New Orleans, etc. Initially, many were poor, marginalized, faced prejudice. Some found opportunity via hustles, bootlegging during Prohibition, gambling, extortion, protection rackets. Over time, these small gangs grew into organized families, crime syndicates, and eventually national, international crime networks. One milestone was the Castellamarese War 1930–31 in New York City, roughly speaking a power struggle between Joe, the boss, Masseria and Salvatore Maranzano, aided by incipient figures like Lucky Luciano. Broader conflict among mafia factions threatened chaos until Luciano orchestrated Masseria's and later Maranzano's removal, then established a new structure, the Commission, a governing body among mafia families to arbitrate disputes, share profits, enforce rules. This institutionalization gave the mafia in America more stability, more reach. During Prohibition 1920–1933, illegal liquor smuggling and alcohol trafficking created massive profits. Organized crime families used violence, graft, political corruption. They became deeply embedded in urban corruption: police, politicians, judges. The Great Depression, despite economic devastation, offered opportunities: unemployment, public unrest, corrupt enforcement, weak regulation created space for criminal enterprise to flourish. Through mid-20th century, law enforcement began to respond. Federal agencies, wiretaps, RICO laws, racketeer-influenced and corrupt organizations, prosecutions, witness protection. Public exposure increased: trials, books, media portrayals. The mafia became both feared and glamorous in popular imagination: The Godfather, movies, TV, stories of loyalty, betrayal, crime and honor. At the same time, internal pressures built: infighting, betrayal, informants, e.g. Joe Valachi, who testified in the 1960s, giving a first inside account of the Italian-American mafia to the public. Many mafia figures were arrested, some families weakened. The authorities made progress, though organized crime proved resilient. Turning to the Mafia video game series, the creators draw heavily on American mafia tropes, 20th century settings, Prohibition era, the Depression, urban corruption, moral ambiguity, and cinematic storytelling. The first Mafia game opens in 1938, in a city called Lost Heaven, loosely resembling a composite of mid-US cities in that era. A cab driver Tommy Angelo is pulled into organized crime after chance events. He helps mobsters in danger, catches the attention of Don Salieri, becomes involved in crime more deeply than he planned. The story frames loyalty, betrayal, ambition, death, moral choice. Tommy's rise is slow, his personal life suffers, eventually he realizes that crime is a trap. One wrong move, betrayal, legal pressure, or internal politics can destroy you. Mafia portrays the life of a gangster more than the glitz, violence, danger, guilt, loss. It underscores the idea that involvement in organized crime is often accidental or coerced, not by design. Mafia 2 shifts forward in time, post-World War II, during late 1940s–1950s, with Vito Scaletta returning from war, joining the mob to survive, to provide. The period shows changing America: prosperity mixed with corruption, the influence of returns from war, rising crime empires, expansion into legitimate business and shady rackets, drugs, gambling, labor unions. The moral cost, betrayal by friends, losses of innocence are themes. Mafia 3 takes yet another turn, set in 1968 New Bordeaux, fictional city inspired by New Orleans. The narrative centers on Lincoln Clay, a biracial orphan and Vietnam veteran, who returns to find family murdered, betrayed by the mob. He builds his own network to dismantle the Italian mafia's control, city by city, through violence and alliances. Here, race, war trauma, political corruption, social inequity interplay with organized crime in novel ways. The mafia in this era is more entrenched, more institutional, more intertwined with businesses and politics. Between these main titles there are remasters and definitive editions, side stories, changes in game technology, storytelling, atmosphere. The games emphasize that crime never stays neat. Every action has consequences, betrayal may come from all sides, law enforcement encroaches, one's allies may become enemies. Recently, Mafia The Old Country moves back in time, a prequel to early 1900s Sicily, showing the origins, the cruelty of conditions in the sulfur mines, the indentured labor, carusi, oppressive landowners, tribal loyalties, violent oppression. The protagonist, Enzo Favara, is born into hardship, forced labor, abuses, a world of poverty and exploitation. He is drawn into the orbit of Don Bernardo Torrisi, an ambitious crime boss, and begins his moral journey from suffering to crime membership, to ambition. The setting shows how the mafia as an institution is rooted in local history, injustice, socio-economic helplessness, oppression. It implicates that what becomes the mafia in America had deep roots in Sicily: oligarchy, rural poverty, absence of law, endemic violence. Comparing the real history with the games, many parallels, many artistic divergences. Real mafia history shows gradual institutionalization, from local, tribal, secret societies, to powerful networks in America with structure, families, bosses, underbosses, consigliere, codes, rules, rituals. Games dramatize this, giving narrative arcs through individuals Tommy, Vito, Lincoln, Enzo, so the player feels the cost: moral compromise, loss, betrayal. Real life often lacked clean moral narratives. Many criminals had mixed motives: power, profit, survival. Key real events to note: the establishment of the 5 families in New York under Luciano, the rise of Prohibition as a catalyst, federal legal reforms, infiltration by informants, wars between families, the mafia's involvement in vice, gambling, drugs, corrupt relationships with law enforcement, and the decline, or at least partial suppression, in the late 20th century via trials and fading social acceptance. In the games, the settings mirror these real dynamics. Mafia 1930s shows the early rise period. Mafia 2 shows mid-20th century consolidation. Mafia 3 shows conflict, revenge, the effects of institutional power. The Old Country shows origin, suffering, early structures. The themes: loyalty versus betrayal, family versus self, idealism corrupted, crime's illusion of power versus its actual cost, law and order vs. corruption, roots in suffering and inequality. Culturally, the mafia has fascinated the public for decades. Media, books, films, TV romanticize some aspects: codes of honor, family, style. But there's also the brutal truth: violence, murder, fear, loss, betrayal, legal consequences. The myth often overshadows the suffering of innocents, victims, community disruption. Legally and socially, governments have tried multiple strategies: criminalization of conspiracy laws, prosecuting lower-ranked members to flip higher ones, using wiretaps, creating witness protection, financial tracking, international cooperation. Mafia often crosses borders, in smuggling, drug trafficking, export of corruption. Meanwhile, mafia structures adapt: underground activity, using legitimate fronts, corruption, bribery, compartmentalization. In modern times, though the Italian-American mafia has been weakened compared to its mid-20th century peak, organized crime remains a serious issue globally, including Italy, Cosa Nostra, 'Ndrangheta, Camorra, as well as in Latin America, Asia, Eastern Europe. The nature of mafia-like organizations, crime families, syndicates, is universal in many places, adapted to local conditions: corruption, weak rule of law, poverty, political instability, demand for illegal goods or services. The mafia games end up as both reflections and dramatizations. They don't shy from violence, they show consequences. They highlight how individuals caught in crime often lose everything: family, moral self, freedom, sometimes life. And that crime is not glamorous in real terms, even if in fiction it's cinematic. So far, then, the Mafia story is one of origin in social injustice, adaptation under opportunity, prohibition, war, corruption, growth into powerful institutions, conflict, internal and external, corrosion from within, betrayal, informants, and from without, law enforcement, public exposure, decline or transformation, constant tension between myth and truth. The future is uncertain. Whether organized crime will become more hidden, more subtle, whether video games and culture will continue exploring its moral ambiguity, whether law enforcement, policy reforms, international cooperation can further reduce its power, whether poverty, inequality, corruption will continue to provide soil for mafia-like organizations to grow. In conclusion, the mafia is not a single monolithic thing. It is many things: a tradition, an institution, a social structure, a criminal organization. It is rooted in human social problems: injustice, poverty, corruption, ambition, betrayal, loyalty, fear. Its story continues because those problems persist. The games give us windows into its world, personifying the tragedy and drama, letting us ask, at what cost do we seek power? What do we sacrifice? Is there redemption? And if so, is it possible?